All right. Reference packet for the meeting on February 14th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the Township. And so some of this they're just things that I would personally like to have if I was on a board making decisions or in the public and wanting to know what was happening. Now, the reference packet is, in this case, larger than the board packet. So, and the reference packet, I think, is just over 100 pages, maybe 103 pages. The board packet is a large one because of the multiple resolutions and land bid openings and that type of stuff. And it's 79 pages. And so, in the reference packet, I have a few relevant things and just informational items. The first one I have is The State by Frederick Bastiat. Now, I included this in previous reference packet before, to previous board packet actually, before I created a separate reference packet. This is a 12-page essay from 1848 by Frederick Bastiat. It was part of the French liberal school as an economist, political activist, and the French liberal school in general is amazing, very good, with Frederick Bastiat, Jean-Baptiste Say, and Antoine Louis Claude Destutt Tracy, who was the favorite economist of Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson actually translated from the French into the English, personally, his book on political economy, which is very good. And in this 12-page essay by Frederick Bastiat is at that same level, I think. They have different writing styles and insights, and they were a bit different, but same type of time period. And it's wonderful. I might make a separate video just reading the 12 pages of The State by Frederick Bastiat. But I think it's important to keep in mind when we're making all of these financial decisions. And so much in our society in general is promoted as free, and it's kind of ridiculous. It's not free 100% across the board. It has to some resource has to come from somewhere, and so it can't be free. And so when the government's giving you free stuff, they took it from somebody else. And Frederick Bastiat refers to this as the left and right hand of government, and it's the best way to run for office, right? And people do this all the time. So they say taxes are too high, we need to cut taxes. And then you're not getting enough, and we need to give you a bunch of free stuff. And how is this possible? It is not possible, right? It is a lie. And so it's super important because it's been working for thousands of years. It's a very similar thing that is used in ancient Greece, Roman politics, right? Ancient Britain, Spain, France, Netherlands, all the places that have had empires anywhere, because it is built into the human psychology. And so it's great to keep that idea in mind. Next, I have the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds overview of the final rule. And so these are the final rules that finally come out on these ARPA funds. Now that we have the final rules, I think it's reasonable to start making decisions. Other municipalities already started spending money, but not something I want to do before we actually had the final rules in place. And so that's relatively large in this packet. I don't know how many pages it is, but it's decent size. And then after that, we have general facts, so frequently asked questions about the ARPA funds that's only a couple of pages long, so on that same information. Next, we have my presentation that I did last year for the Muskegon Lake Watershed Partnership on the update on the 3 major contamination sites in Dalton Township, the Dual Gardner landfill, the business park, Astoria Cordova chemical companies, and then this Northside landfill that's just emerging, and people are trying to figure out what to do with that one. Next, because this is a big issue, it's actually the next 3 things. Former Northside landfill background from Eagle. So I have a little bit of information about the history of that from the state, from Eagle. Next, I have a water samples map so people can see where water samplings were done in that area. And then I have the MPART conference call on PFAS. Of these acronyms. And so it is just an explanation. It was designed for local officials, so for politicians, to update them on how PFAS is going and what kind of situation that is. And so I've included that in here as well, a little bit of light reading if anyone wants to read something to make them fall asleep. But I like to, obviously I've been huge into transparency, and I have a tendency to probably be too transparent, or at least that's been the feedback, and I try to be careful with other people's information and something that might make them look bad for no good reason, those types of things. But otherwise, I see no problem with releasing a bunch of stuff, and that's why I've made my board packets huge with a bunch of information for whoever wants to look at them. I mean, it's kind of unusual to make contracts and those types of things just publicly available, but I like to have that out there. And I think there's the same type of situation, with like the ARPA funds, and like the government officials kind of want to make those decisions the way they want to make them, maybe without all of the rules, maybe being completely transparent on what could or could not happen. Because the big issue is opportunity cost, right? If you're spending some of that money here, that means you're not spending it somewhere else. And so opportunity cost is the major economic term that would apply in this situation and concept. And then on the PFAS issue, I think everyone in the government right now is super afraid of it, because it's this huge environmental contamination issue that I don't know if it can be solved without bankrupting probably the country, at least in our situation, probably the state. And so it's this massive massive issue, and they don't want to say it's in all the water and all the plants and all the animals. But why not? So they cause panic in some other places where they wouldn't need to, and then they cover up some things that might cause panic over here, and it's a weird shell game that the government plays with public relations like those. And so my personal view on that is just release it, let people know, and let people decide. Why try to hide that stuff from them? So, which is very unusual for a politician, so I don't necessarily fit in everywhere, which is a good thing. We need some more of that, I think. So that's the reference packet, even though it's a much shorter video than all of the items that went over for the board meeting, the board packet. And I think I'll separately at some point read out The State by Frederick Bastiat, because it's a great work, and it's very short. And there are a few of those just great works on political manipulation and political corruption and those types of things. And a related one is the beginning, I believe the first chapter, so it might be only like the first 15 pages, of Taxation by Andrew Mellon, who was the Secretary of the Treasury under Coolidge in the 1920s, and also a big banker. And he wrote a book called Taxation, The People's Business is the subtitle, and it's just wonderful. And he talks about how this merging happens of the big moneyed interest in businesses and people that are just wealthy with government, and how that corrupts the system, and why, which is that essentially you raise taxes to where it doesn't make sense to just straight pay them anymore, because at a certain level people just pay their taxes, no big deal. Like, you get some services, we have roads, we have fire, this type of stuff, we have police, that's something that the government should definitely be doing. And so just pay the taxes. It's the easiest, it's cheapest, they end up getting something for it. But at a certain level, if you keep going higher and higher, as the United States has done a few times in its history, for the people that can afford it, it doesn't make sense to pay taxes anymore. It makes sense to donate money to politicians to have the tax laws increase so that loopholes can be added, and then to hire accountants and lawyers to be able to jump through those loopholes. And so that is what happens. That is why our tax laws are so massive, and there's so many loopholes, and the taxing obviously isn't fair. There's a great economist, Henry George, self-taught in the late 1800s in the United States, who presented Georgism, which would have been such a better direction for the United States to go on taxation. But obviously we didn't go in that direction. Very unfortunate, and you would need the greatest leader in history to make the United States tax code start going in a better direction at this point, I think. So, which is unfortunate, but I think the reality of the situation. And actually, one of Bastiat's other works, his most famous work, is The Law. And that book presents the similar idea in a less technical way, maybe. And it's 55 pages in the English translation that I have. And it talks about how, over time, the business interests and the government interests come together and corrupts both systems. And we see that all the time throughout history on this repeated, iterative cycle. And so it's extremely interesting, the people that have pointed those out. And this work is a good point to start understanding some of how that works. So I like it. And it's only 12 pages short. So anyways, that's a reference packet for February 14th, 2022. Thanks.